Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to a Tuesday episode of the Lock Shop's Fantasy Football Extravaganza, brought to you by our wonderful partners over at Coolbet. Sign up for an account today. Use the code LOCKSHOP, and boy, we've got our starts of the week. We got a few guys on a waiver wire that you might want to check out, but what a busy day in the National Football League trade deadline, which you just don't see very often, Haas. It was wild today.
Yeah, you know what? It was wild because I was on WST, Winnipeg Sports Talk today, and I was running solo. By the way, congratulations to Remo and his growing family. They added a +1 today, so shout out to Remo and his lovely fam. But I was getting notes from Jeremy, our producer, as things were going through and, you know, kind of paying attention to a tweet or just refreshing Schefter. There was way more action than we normally get for an NFL trade deadline, and perfect day to be doing the fantasy football extravaganza, Dusty, because I think a lot of these deals have some direct impact on a number of fantasy situations around the league.
Yeah, like if you look at, I mean, there are basically three ways that these trades are impacting people: the team they're leaving, themselves, and the team that they're going to, right? So the fantasy fallout from a bunch of guys who moved today. I mean, if we're just looking from the offensive side of things, guys who move that could somehow impact your league. Okay, Nyheim Hines, he goes to the Bills. What does that mean really for James Cook and obviously Singletary in a passing role? That's what Hines is designed to do. Miami trades for Jeff Wilson Jr. after trading Chase Edmonds to Denver. What's the impact there on Melvin Gordon? Chase Claypool goes to the Bears. Great news for George Pickens owners. What does it mean for Claypool's fantasy? Does it help Justin Fields even a little bit? And then TJ Hawkinson, the Detroit Lions, trading TJ Hawkinson in division to the Minnesota Vikings, which is a huge get for the Minnesota Vikings with Irv Smith banged up. Plus, they've been looking for a legitimate tight end for a few years here. They had Rudolph for a bit, but so the follow. I mean, I was not expecting this much fantasy impact out of today, buddy. This is great.
No, I'm with you. I mean, from a football standpoint, and you know, as far as the NFL goes, maybe less fantasy. I mean, by far the biggest trade is the move that the Dolphins made to bring in Bradley Chubb. When we've seen the impact that Von Miller's had on that defense for the Buffalo Bills. They've already got a stud young end, and then to add in Bradley Chubb, who sounds like he's going to get a new contract with the Dolphins. And they're really good. They've traded the pick that they got from San Francisco that they had in the first round as part of this deal. They've lost the other first rounder, of course, because of the tampering with Tom Brady that happened with owner Stephen Ross. So I think Mike McDaniel's looking at his club and is going, this might be as good of a chance as we have over the course of the next few years. Let's push our chips into the middle and support this team. And man, they did a good job. Although it was sort of weird that Chase Edmonds was a part of that deal. Usually you'll have a player, you'll have involve a couple picks.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that the Dolphins tweaked their backfield in such a way, taking out Chase Edmonds, who's probably more comparable to a Nyheim Hines, a guy that catches a lot of footballs, doesn't get a ton of carries, for a guy a hell of a lot more like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Sort of have two of the same guys, but it's obvious that that's the way they're going to be using their running back position, because when you've got guys like Waddle and Tyreek Hill, you don't waste a lot of times on short screen passes to your running backs, because most of those short passes, you'd rather get into the hands of your deadly wide receivers.
Well, you know why it makes a ton of sense. Head coach of the Dolphins, where do you come from? Niners. Right? Already has Mostert. Goes out and gets Jeff Wilson Jr. He's basically relocated the Niners backfield to Miami. So that might be good news if you're a Jeff Wilson Jr. owner. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. When I lay these out to you, these 5 moves from a fantasy perspective, I mean, whether it be that player directly or the follow where he left or the follow where he's going, is there one that really, I mean, the Edmonds thing's very interesting because you just don't see a lot of guys sort of just thrown into a deal like this. But Who gets impacted the most by this, do you think?
Well, I'll say this. I think this is great news for Raheem Mostert and Raheem Mostert owners, because I think Jeff Wilson comes in as a comparable backup, a guy that can be spelled out. But I think this tells us that Mostert is the guy for the Dolphins in the backfield going forward. This could be good for Chase Edmonds, because I think we know full well that Melvin Gordon stinks. The coaching staff has no faith in him. And in all likelihood, I mean, even with Devontae Williams out for the entire year, Melvin Gordon is not the guy. And, I think they ended up getting Edmonds added in, and he'll probably see a much greater opportunity than he was in those final few games with the Dolphins as Mostert's target share or touch share went up and up week by week. To me, the most interesting one is the Vikings getting TJ Hawkinson from Detroit. It is a bit of a white flag for the Lions on their season, and an acceptance that, they need to build and they need to get some picks. And it's sort of disappointing. I thought they had the potential of being a lot better. They still should have won a few more games already with the way they played. But Hawkinson coming into that Minnesota offense, especially considering Irv Smith's gone on IR with a high ankle sprain, a player like a quarterback like Cousins, with the receivers that they've got there in Jefferson and Thielen, all of a sudden, if you've got a legit pass catching weapon at the tight end position, I think that makes the Dolphins or the Vikings offense far, far more dangerous. Does it affect any of those other players individually? Maybe Thielen a little bit more. Justin Jefferson's still going to be the first target. But I'll tell you what, I like it. If I am holding on to TJ Hawkinson, I'm pretty excited to see what happens in Minnesota, especially considered they did pay a significant price with the second and third going to the Motor City.
Yeah, as a Chase Edmonds owner in a few leagues, I know his numbers are not great, but I think his situation has just got a lot better. All right, like I think they're going to try to get some run out of him. So that's not bad. Any thoughts on Claypool to the Bears? I've got George Pickens in a few leagues. I really like it for leagues in which you have George Pickens. I think that's great for his value from a dynasty perspective and a rest of season this year. Does this impact, what do you think of Claypool on the Bears? I mean, they only really have Darnell Mooney. Could be opportunity for a larger role there. They continue to sort of let Fields kind of release him a little bit here. Is there any sort of impact you think there?
Well, listen, I think he's in a better spot now. I mean, I've kind of been impressed. And listen, I know that the Bears got run over by the Cowboys last week. I mean, they were playing on a short week, although the Bears have run the football very well over the last couple of games. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they've had big rushing performances in both games. And that, my friends, is the key to allowing Justin Fields to be a little bit more dangerous in the passing side of things. And you said it. I mean, they really haven't had a lot of weapons. The organization did not do Justin Fields any favors, in my opinion, going into the season. Letting Allen Robinson go. They had Mooney, but they really haven't done very much to, what do they have, Equanimeous St. Brown's in that mix?
Yeah.
He was a really talented player. And when he sees the ball, he's able to make some plays. So this is a great opportunity for him, I think, to prove himself as a regular starter right now in the National Football League. And maybe for a dynasty league, it's a little bit more impactful. I mean, I don't know how startable he's going to be the rest of the way, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about a couple big games from Chase Clayfield in his new city before the end of the season.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. All right, so I mean, some impact here from a waiver wire perspective. A lot of the guys moved today are probably at least on a bench in most of your leagues. You're probably not going to find a lot of them available, but anybody intrigue you on the waiver wire this week, Huss?
Well, the waiver, and just quickly, I just want to say one thing about the Niners right now that they've moved Wilson. Part of it, and Dusty, I don't know how much you got a chance to see of that Rams-Niner game on the weekend, but I could not believe how deadly Christian McCaffrey was with a week of practice as the focus guy. I mean, they lost Deebo Samuel, arguably their best player for that game, going up against their rival. The defense stepped up, but Christian McCaffrey was incredible. As a guy that has McCaffrey in a couple leagues and was sort of knowing what he's capable of in Carolina, his potential has 2 or 3x'd now that he's playing with Kyle Shanahan right now. So listen, if you still have the possibility of getting in on McCaffrey somehow, his stock going like this, by the way.
Okay, so I just have to tell you then. I'm not sure if you saw it come across it. We're in a league with Jamie Thomas. And I traded Christian McCaffrey in that league today to Jamie Thomas. I'm 3-5. I don't got a team to win it. He was a first-round pick, which means we can't protect first-round picks, right? They all go back in. So it was basically a rental. I traded him and a 5th and a 7th rounder. I got a first-rounder. I got a 3rd rounder. I got Ramondre Stevenson, and I got Chris Godwin. So I thought it was a pretty good offer. I'm not winning it this year. I can't keep McCaffrey anyway. Now I've got 2 firsts, a 2nd, and 2 thirds next year. And I'm not sure which round Stevenson was drafted, and I'm probably not going to end up keeping him anyway. But what do you think, Huss? Did I get enough?
Folks, this is a great lock shop lesson right now. When you're trading a player like Christian McCaffrey, maybe let the other owners know that he's on the block right now, because as a team that is very much in contention in said league, I gotta see, what is my backfield in that league? We got Heineke.
I really hope you don't need him. Yeah.
Oh, I've got Pierce. I've got Mostert. I could have used them. I might have been.
Sorry,
I'm
buddy.
devastated with injuries right now. Connor's out. Debo Samuel's out. Dotson's out. But we'll get Kelsey back in the lineup next week. Anyways, that's interesting. Huge trade for JT. As I said, I could not be higher on McCaffrey right now after watching every play of that game. Kyle Shanahan's pretty brilliant offensively. He knows what he was getting in Christian McCaffrey, and they are going to find ways to get him. And once that happens, don't be surprised if Debo Samuel is even more valuable in that. Teams have really been able to focus on Debo because he's been their best player. And I'm not sure that that's going to be the case when everyone gets healthy in San Francisco. Still loving my Niners future 10-1 to win the NFC, despite how good the Eagles are. The Eagles are looking right now. I'm high on them. I think they win the West. Although, how long are we going to keep sleeping on the Seattle Seahawks right now? Who we'll get to the Seahawks in the picks. As far as the waiver wire, you asked me. Listen, we've talked about a few of the guys. Smith from Tampa Bay, the running back, gave out Van Jefferson a week or 2 ago. He's going to be into the lineup. Those guys are still around. Absolutely go for it. Caleb Huntley is the one guy in Atlanta. He and Tyler Algier sort of splitting the carries right now. Probably worth a roster spot right now. He had 16 carries for 91 yards last week against Carolina. That backfield could be getting a little more crowded as Cordarrelle Patterson potentially returns. And let's not forget the Falcons are a first-place team right now. DJ Moore has a big part of that. It really sucks because if Carolina had won that game, Dusty, the entire division would have been 3-5, which would have given all sorts of hilarious permutations and combinations going forward. But Caleb Huntley in Atlanta is probably a guy you want to look to, and a guy that's still available in a lot of leagues at the tight end position is Evan Engram. He's had more than 6 targets in his last 4 games. He's got into the end zone. He's becoming more and more a reliable target.
10 points in 3 of his last 4, buddy. He's on my list too.
Yeah. So, let's face it. There's not a lot of tight ends that are putting up consistent numbers right now. So if you've got a chance, if you've been struggling, if you don't have Kittle, if you don't have Travis Kelce, he's there. And I guess I'll also mention a guy we've talked about before. I think you might have even brought him up last week, Isaiah Lively. Isaiah Lively.
Likely. Isaiah Likely.
I should say. Yeah. He's actually my play of the week at tight end, because with Mark Andrews out, we know how much much action the tight end gets in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson there. And they picked him very high in the draft. I mean, this is not just a backup that's getting a spot. This is a guy with a big future in the team. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we start seeing the Ravens run an offense similar to the Patriots about 10 years ago when they had Gronk and Aaron Hernandez and a couple little wide receivers running around, but the tight ends were such a big part of that passing game. Isaiah Likely, if he's available, definitely jump on him. He might not be, but he's not a bad pick and probably a great value pick in DraftKings style contest for this week.
I saw his availability on one of the platforms at like 91%. So he's probably out there in quite a few leagues. And if Andrews isn't playing like in weeks moving forward, he's a top 12 tight end. And I'm with Huss. I think they get to a point with, due to lack of other receiving options, you could probably make the most of these two guys. I mean, I think it could be really good. So I've had him stashed on a couple of benches in deep dynasty leagues. Really happy with that right now. So yeah, Ingram and Isaiah Likely were two of my tight ends. Well, the only two tight ends I had. There's a couple other guys to discuss. Not a strong week at running back. Check on Kenyon Drake. I think in CBS leagues he's about 54% rostered, with Gus Edwards banged up and obviously Dobbins chronically hurt all the time. Kenyon Drake could be in line for a start there. Rondale Moore, look for him in your leagues. I saw he's about 65% owned, I think, on Yahoo platforms, which means, 3 or 4 out of every 10 leagues, he's still going to be available. DeAndre Hopkins returning has not impacted him negatively in any way. In fact, what it has done is it's impacted Zach Ertz, the tight end. As long as they keep Rondale Moore in the slot, he's going to be excellent. The only time he's not in the slot is when A.J. Green is inactive. Then they'll move Rondale outside. But Rondale Moore in the slot has been excellent. That's pointing up right now. So if he is somehow available in some of your leagues, especially maybe in shallower leagues, that's a guy you could certainly look at this week. And then this is a guy who I went and checked a few of my 12-team leagues today, one quarterback, 12-team leagues. And he's available in a bunch of them. And I think I'll probably be putting in a claim for him. And it kind of depends on your current quarterback situation. But I think we're all still a little hesitant to jump on the Justin Fields train. And Justin Fields has been a QB1 like 4 weeks in a row. He has had at least 47 yards rushing in 6 straight weeks, I believe. He's been up over that 60 mark, I think, 3 games in a row. He's running the ball at least 8 times. They're starting to open him up a little bit in the passing game as well. So this guy's, I'm not saying pick him up. He's going to win you your league at the end of this year. But pick him up because he's doing a lot better than Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, and some of these other guys that you'd be rotating
Aaron
in that
Rodgers.
8 to 12 spot. Aaron Rodgers. You know what? In 2 of my leagues, buddy, I've got Aaron Rodgers right now, and Justin Fields is on the waiver wire, and I've been hesitant the last couple of weeks, but I think maybe it's time to stop being hesitant on it. I'm going to have to pull the trigger on that.
Well, I'm with you on Fields, and let's not forget he gets Chase Claypool. I mean, it might take a week or two, but I mean he's got a big, legit NFL target to add to the mix, and that's only going to be good for him. Yeah, no, Aaron's on the bench for me. I sat his ass down, and you know who I went with? Taylor Heineke.
Of course, you went with Heineke.
and hey, it was the right move. Heineke had a great game. I mean, that late comeback, that late touchdown, which won us a bunch of bets, a parlay, was also massive for fantasy. He got in a 22-23 point week, and a lot of people, myself included, if you were sitting with the Patrick Mahomes and no backup, you needed a guy. He was there. He came through. And then in another league when I was just sick and tired of looking at Aaron Rodgers and feeling about Rodgers the way he feels about all of his receivers. So I benched his ass and started Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke. The love continues. I love it. All right, let's get to our starts of the week. Who are you looking at this week, buddy?
Well, let's start off at QB, and this is a guy we've talked a lot about this week. He is still undervalued right now, as is their team, as is their offense, and it's Geno Smith. And the Seahawks, the first place Seahawks, are taking the show to the desert and Arizona. And I don't know if there's been a more, like, if you look at over at least Cliff Kingsbury's time, if there's a team that's consistently been more disappointing at home. Listen, I know they don't have a massive home field advantage there, and you've often got a lot of visiting fans coming in, but they are terrible as favorites at home. And to be honest, this opened in between 2 and 3. I have no idea why Arizona is even the favorite in this game, based on what we've seen so far this year. Maybe
it's 1.5 right now. I had to go check. They're 1.5 point favorites right now.
I bet this ends up as a pick 'em. I bet this ends up as a pick 'em.
Sure.
It's going the other way. If you like Seattle, take the 1.5 right now. Listen, Geno's just been marvelous. We saw him, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett meet the media afterwards, and
together as a group.
Yes, I'm not sure if that was a direct dig at Russell Wilson. Lockett says it isn't. And I know there's been a lot of piling on Russ, but the bottom line is this trade has turned out to be larcenous for the Seattle Seahawks. They're winning football games. The guys they used with the picks are starting right now, and they got a whole whackload more picks next year. Meanwhile, the Broncos, after all those expectations, are trading for picks right now and getting rid of players like Bradley Chubb. So Geno Smith against the Cardinals, love him this week. He's my start of the week at the quarterback position. Running back is Austin Eckler. And Eckler, maybe this is easy to just focus in. I think Devontae Freeman was my guy last week. And he, of course, or Foreman, I should say, from Carolina, he went off against Atlanta. And I think Austin Eckler is going to do quite a bit of the same. Chargers are going to be coming off the bye week. Mike Williams is out. That just means there's another challenge for Justin Herbert, how they're going to move the football. To me, it's going to be Austin Eckler all day long. I don't mind paying the price for him in a DFS format. And certainly if you have him, even if you have such a loaded backfield that he might not be an auto start, he has to be in your lineup this week against the Atlanta Falcons. And wow, I had put this together before the TJ Hawkinson trade, but I'm going back to your guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, He's had a real rough run of luck lately. And I think that's really impacted the Detroit Lions. But he's seemingly back, getting guys healthy. Certainly they showed a lot more last week against the Miami Dolphins. But as we look ahead to this week in the National Football League, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had such an amazing start to the season, will be ready to go back at home against the Packers, who haven't had the defense that maybe we expected coming into the start of this year. So those are guys that I like. And I talked about the tight end, with Mark Andrews dinged up. Even if he plays, I think Isaiah's going to get plenty more opportunity to be in the mix. And Dusty, I would not all be surprised if, not like next year, but later on this year, we're seeing Isaiah Likely far more involved regularly as a target for Lamar Jackson, even if Andrews is on the field. But this could be a week that he really has a big one because of Andrews' injury situation. Where are you going?
Well, my starts of the week, I mentioned him earlier, Evan Ingram at tight end. We like him as a guy you can still maybe find on the waivers in some of your leagues. Hopefully you're in leagues right now where he's not available. I mean, he should be scooped up in most leagues. I like his matchup this week, so don't need to dive into him too much more because we already hit him. But Evan Ingram would be my start of the week at the tight end position. At the quarterback position, I'm going to go with a bounce back week for Joe Burrow. He is the number one quarterback 2 weeks in a row. This week, he was the number 22 quarterback in fantasy. How does he get for a bounce back? He gets the Carolina Panthers this week. There is a 3-touchdown game coming here for Joe Burrow. 350 yards against the Carolina Panthers. And you know what? Prior to that prior to that Browns game, buddy, Joe Burrow had ran for a touchdown in 3 consecutive games, which I really didn't think would be saying at any point this year. So I think there's a huge bounce back coming for Joe Burrow. Obviously, you're starting him in your leagues, but I think he's a great DFS play this weekend as well. My running back, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't bring myself to go Aaron Rodgers against the Detroit Lions, but I can bring myself to go Aaron Jones against the Detroit Lions. Aaron Jones is set up for an absolutely monster week, especially through the air. I mean, they really don't have much else going for them in there. This guy should get a dozen targets in the passing game every single week. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets close to that number this week against the Detroit Lions. There's a 2-touchdown game very much on the table for Aaron Jones this week against the Detroit Lions. So hedging a little bit as I sit back this weekend and watch my Lions get pumped, even though it's a game I think they could win. I think this is the game that Dan Campbell needs, but I still think Aaron Jones will have a big day. If the Lions are going to win this game, they're going to win it 33-30 or something ridiculous like that. So love Aaron Jones.
Do it for Dan. Do it for Dan. He's under a lot of heat right now.
That would be good. And I think you'll respect this, us. Start of the week wide receiver, Scary Terry McLaurin. He's had a couple of really good games. Hasn't had that monster game just yet. Gets the Vikings, I believe, this week. And just, continues to have a really nice connection with Heineke. I mean, you knew it coming. You laid it out nicely for us a couple of times, Sus. I think there's a big game coming for a guy that I've been very patient with in fantasy for, to be honest with you, a couple of years right now. His average consensus ranking right now over at Fantasy Pros is 20th among wide receivers. Does have a pretty decent matchup. And you know what? The last 2 weeks, when he's put together pretty decent finishes, 18 and 16 fantasy points each of the last 2 weeks. He had more targets in each of the last 2 weeks than he did since week 3. So getting Heineke back has certainly worked there. But he had like some pretty tough matchups against shutdown corners in the last 2 games. So, and he's managed to find some success there. So I think there's a 20+ point fantasy week coming here for Terry McLaurin. So prior to bringing you on, I'd probably say 2 times a year for the first 4 seasons of this podcast, I was on Terry McLaurin as my start of the week. So it feels great. Feels great to get back there, buddy. I love it.
You know what? I mean, we joke about the Commanders, but they're 4-4 right now. I mean,
they've won 3 in a row.
Football. They've won 3 in a row. It's what happens once. I mean, it's so funny. Matt Ryan replaces Carson Wentz, who replaces Taylor Heineke. Both of those guys already done with the bench. Baker Mayfield coming in Carolina. He's already done as well. And some of the guys that were already there are getting their chance to do it, and they're actually winning games right now. And a little bit of a tease for Friday's Best Bet show. I'm staring down this Washington Commanders plus 3.5 against the Vikings, minus 118 right now, hoping that thing doesn't go to 3. And I'll be honest, I am going to give a long, hard look at that plus 141 money line, because it wouldn't at all surprise me if we were putting our left hands up again after the game on Sunday.
Well, we'll have our Best Bets episode for you on Friday. We'll have a Thursday night football preview. We got some CFL preview or CFL playoff preview and some picks coming up on Wednesday. Some puck picks probably on the way Wednesday as well. But that is your fantasy football Week 9 preview episode, all brought to you by the Lock Shop and the Roll Info partners over at Coolbet. If you have any start and sit questions, and I see them all the time, and I try to get back to as many of them as I can. You can slide into my DMs so your league mates don't see them out on Twitter at NielsenTSN1260, and I'll try to get to a few of those. So we work our way through the week. Huss, sorry I didn't reach out about CMC, buddy. I feel really bad about that now. I thought first and a third, well, you know first and a third and 2 guys. That's not a bad offer. I mean, you would have had to give me a first and a second to top it.
I probably would have tried not to trade my first, and then you would have taken a better offer from Jamie, but it'll just be more impressive when we get it done. Quick listener league update just before we go. The Golden Boys at the top of the West Division at 6-2, but a very tight division. Fractured but whole, AM Nasty Snacks, and the Suckiest Sucks, all just 1 game back at 5-3. Very different story over in the East. Blame Canada, blame Canada. I believe that's Marshall Patterson's team. Nicely done, Marsh. He's at 6-2. Dirty Randy at 3-5. Then Eckler's Army and the Hellfish at 3-5. Is this a typo? Are Dusty's Destroyers really 2-6? What is going on?
I've been sticking with Tom Brady at quarterback. that's what's going on, buddy. It's pretty basic. Plus, that was a league in which I drafted Kelsey early, right? So then I tried to hit some receivers a little bit later on. Cortland Sutton has probably been my biggest disappointment in fantasy because I got him in a bunch of leagues. Amari Cooper's actually been okay. DeAndre Hopkins is back now. Kelsey was on a bye last week, but it's time to move on from Tom Brady in that league. I guess it's finally time to give up on him. So...
yeah, it absolutely is. Much like Aaron Rodgers, much like Baker Mayfield and all. I mean, listen, I'm not saying that Brady's not going to have a big game.
Let me see who's available. Let's see who's available at quarterback in that league. Let's see. Justin Fields. So that's definitely a switch that would be worth making right now. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence is available there. Russell Wilson, if I want to get dangerous. And Taylor Heineke also kicking around.
Can you believe that he's just straight up cut and available for whoever? Trevor Lawrence, and they're going up against the Raiders, or what was the Raiders after they basically threw up the white flag. 32nd defense to go up against. That is not too bad. Both Fields and Vegas have great matchups next week. So I think you got some options there right now. And I had to pick up Danny Dimes and played him last week with Mahomes's bye week. Danny Dimes is going to be back on the waiver wire very soon. So he's on the bye
I'll keep an eye out for him.
He won't help you this week.
Yeah. All right, there you go. That's another episode of the Fantasy Football Extravaganza. Once again, if you have any questions, just hit us up on Twitter. Lock Shop will continue tomorrow. We'll get you ready for the CFL playoffs and a little action in the National Hockey League as well. Hustle, talk to you then, bud.
Heineke's available.